Chapter 2, Flaming Out. When I heard the kid shout, "Fire!" my brain said, "Get out of here," but my feet said, "Freeze." My feet won. Suddenly, kids were running all over the place. Along both sides of the hall, doors flew open and kids popped out, almost like they were throwing a giant surprise party. Far down the edge of the hall, smoke drifted from a room. There wasn't a lot of smoke, just a trickle, but any smoke is bad if it isn't supposed to be there. At least the fire wasn't between me and the stairs. I relaxed when I realized that I wasn't trapped. "It's Torchy's room," one kid said. "He did it again." Principal Davis sighed. "I told him to make sure he didn't get any matches," he said. "Can't anyone around here carry out a simple order? Do I have to do everything myself?" "Coming through," someone shouted from behind us. A guy raced up the stairs carrying a fire extinguisher. He sprinted past us and hurried towards the room. I followed, trying to slip my way through the crowd that had gathered at the edge of the smoke. I managed to squeeze next to the doorway and catch a glimpse inside the room. A small fire smoldered on a desk. It looked like a bunch of papers were burning. A kid stood pressed against the far wall, staring at the fire. I figured that must be Torchy. "I didn't do it," he said. "Honest, I didn't do nothing." He raised his hands in a display of innocence. A trickle of sweat ran down his forehead, past his right eye. It stopped, finally, at his pudgy cheek. Red hair, also damp, drooped in clumps from a wandering part that ran along the center of his scalp. It was the sort of face a ventriloquist would have loved. "I didn't do it," he repeated. "Yeah, right," I thought, "and I'm Abe Lincoln." In the room, the guy with the fire extinguisher let fly with a stream of foamy spray, knocking out the blaze pretty quickly. He spun towards the crowd of kids and spouted out words I never would have expected. "Quick! What have we learned here?" Nobody said a thing. I sure didn't. "Come on," the man said. "This is easy. What 3 things are required for a fire?" "Heat and fuel," a kid at the back of the crowd said. I couldn't believe the guy was turning this into a science lesson. He had to be a teacher, although he wasn't dressed like one. He wore a t-shirt with Princeton on it in big orange letters hanging above the picture of a tiger. The shirt was tucked into a pair of jeans. The frayed jean cuffs hung over scuffed shoes, the same way his ragged mustache hung over his upper lip. "Right, heat and fuel. That's 2. "Come on, one more," the man urged. He took a real deep breath. "Oh, oxygen," someone else said. Exactly. The guy held up the extinguisher. "So we smother the fire to deprive it of oxygen. We can also stop a fire by lowering the temperature or removing the fuel. Remember that." He gave the desktop another short blast. Then he turned his attention to Torchy. I wondered if he was going to blast the kid with a stream of words the way that he blasted the fire with a stream of foam. But he just sighed and said, "Oh, Philip, we need to work a bit harder on this problem of yours." He tucked the extinguisher under his left arm and held his right hand out, palm up. Torchy, I guess his real name was Philip, opened his mouth as if he was going to protest. Then he shrugged, reached into his pants pocket, and pulled out a disposable lighter. "I really didn't do nothing," he said as he dropped the lighter in the man's hand. "Honest, what a loser." The man didn't say anything more to Torchy. He put the lighter in his own pocket and then turned to the crowd and said, "Oh, okay, guys, it's all over. Nothing else to see. Move along." He sounded like a city cop trying to get people away from an accident, but I sort of liked that. "Well," Principal Davis said, coming up behind me, "this works out rather nicely. Now that you're together, allow me to introduce you to your roommate, Martin Anderson. Meet Philip Gregg." My roommates? Oh, crap. This had to be a joke. Torchy looked at the principal and spewed out the double negative denial again. "I didn't do nothing." His eyes shifted over towards me as if he hopes I could leap to his defense. "Keep dreaming, Fireboy." "Well, we'll deal with that issue later, Philip. For now, why don't you be a good lad and show Martin around the school? I have to get back to my office." With that, Principal Davis marched off, leaving me alone in the company of Philip or Torchy or whatever his flaming name was. I stared after the principal. That was it? Hi, bye, rip me from my home and shove me here? I had no choice except to turn back to my new roommate. Now that it was just the 2 of us, I figured Torchy would find a different song. No such luck. "I really didn't do it," he said. "Sheesh, I needed a sign with that printed on it." or one of those big pin-on buttons. Then he could just point wherever he wanted to claim he was innocent. I waited for him to change the subject. He wiped his face with his sleeve. It didn't do much for his face, and it left a big wet blotch on his shirt. "Didn't do nothing," he said. So I heard. This was just great. They put me in a room with a kid who liked to start fires. Fantastic. If I'd known ahead of time, I'd at least have brought some marshmallows. We could have toasted them. Hot dogs would be nice too. As it was, I hoped I didn't end up getting toasted myself. Man, we'd be a great pair if that happened. Torchy and toasty. I glanced at the window to make sure it was big enough for me to squeeze through in an emergency. As far as I could see, there was not a fire escape. At least there weren't any bars. On the other hand, this was the 3rd floor, so I hoped I'd never have to use the window as an exit. One of the 2 beds in the room was under the window. From the rumpled look and the couple of burn marks on the sheets, I figured that was Torchy's. The other bed along the opposite wall was unmade, but a pile of sheets and blankets were stacked on it, along with a photocopied booklet that said "Welcome to Edgeview" on the cover. I took a quick glance through the booklet, saw nothing important, and then tossed it into a small garbage can next to the bed. There wasn't much else in the room. Just 2 old wooden desks, 2 small dressers, also made of wood, a pair of lamps, and a closet. A picture of Mars, torn from a magazine, was taped to one wall near the foot of Torchy's bed. Great. Except for the lamps and the garbage can, everything in the room looked flammable. To top it off, the place already smelled like the inside of a fireplace. I tossed my bag to the floor by the closet. "What are you here for?" Torchy asked. "What do you care?" I asked back. He shrugged. "Well, I don't know, I was just wondering. Figured being roommates and all, I should get to know you, and maybe you'd want to know about me. Some of the people here aren't too friendly. Not me, I like people." I held my hand to shut him off. "I'm here because I seem to have a bit of a problem respecting authority." That's how they put it. Well, that's how the polite ones put it. I've also been called a major pain in the butt, a disturbing influence, a smart mouth, a snotty-nosed little puke, among other things. I didn't bother adding some of Dad's more colorful phrases. There was no point in telling the fire freak my life story. Not that he'd care. I stared at the charred pieces of paper scattered around the desk and the bits of extinguisher foam dripping slowly onto the rug. What a mess. It looked like a giant cow had let loose with one monster of a sneeze. And you're here because you have a hard time with math, right? Huh? Poor Torchy seemed a bit puzzled. Just kidding. I could see that this was going to be a lot of fun. I reached down towards my bag, but I didn't want to unpack just yet. That would make it real. "So, you feel like showing me around?" Principal Davis didn't exactly give me a detailed introduction to the place. "Yeah, sure." Torchy led me into the hall and started giving me the tour of Edgeview Alternative School. All right, in the book, there's all these like memo pads and like bits of information. So this one says memo pad on Principal Davis's desk, and it's a list of things to do. So he has to check the insurance situation. He has to make sure the fire extinguisher is refilled. He has to keep an eye on the new student, which is Martin. Note that he didn't seem all that bad at first, but there's something about him that I just can't stand. Number 4, prepare for weekly staff meeting. Number 5, run an ad for a replacement cafeteria worker. And number 6, review history textbook for purchase next year. Number 7 says reschedule dentist appointment. Number 8 says inspect repair work on the driveway. Number 9 says send the monthly report to Alternative Education Committee.